My name is Alvin Zamudio, and the name of the studio is the Soundbox. What I offer in the studio, it's a more intimate environment. This is a smaller studio, so it's not necessarily for a full, big, fatty band to be able to do everything at once. So because of the limitations, there's certain things we can specialize in. So we do a lot of arrangements and things, as well as just a straight-out recording. So there's a bunch of different prices and pay scale that we use. The standard is renting out the studio with an engineer, which is like $25 an hour. But that's different than having a producer, because a producer will actually tell you what he thinks is probably going to be best for the song. So you would not just say to the engineer to do something, he'd actually give you the idea to do it. So that's usually about $50 an hour. If you wanted to run the studio yourself, these are the two things that I came up with, which is if you wanted to just run the studio yourself, you could rent the studio out for about an hour with an engineer, for about $25 an hour to train you on all of our equipment. Then from that point on, you could rent the studio out for $15 an hour using our equipment. All the instruments, all the mics, everything we have here available for as long as you want. If you wanted to bring in your own laptop and hook up to our gear, you could do that for $10 an hour. And I did those two lower price points because I really thought that would help guys that just, they didn't have a place to record, but they needed some place to do that, and then they could pay for the mix down, maybe $25 for an hour just to mix the song down, save a lot of money. The hourly rate is not always appealing to everyone. There are some people that want to rent the studio for a particular project and they just have a certain budget for that project. So if they come along and they say, we'd like to spend X amount on this one particular song or this amount per produced minute, we can make a deal that way as well. I'm willing to negotiate everything with the principle that Conrad Hilton used, which is that the buyer needs to make the seller needs to make a profit, the buyer needs to get a good deal. Somewhere in the middle is where we meet. So I got to make money, and you got to get a good deal. If we can figure out a happy medium on that, then we can make any project work. The hours are very flexible because when I built the studio, I built it very soundproof. So my family doesn't hear much of anything. If it was a loud drummer, probably would hear something. But for the most part, it doesn't affect anything. It's a dedicated space, so it's literally available anytime. But we usually have someone that is around that will be here in case there's an issue if you're not engineering or hiring an engineer. So if you're just renting out the studio and you have a problem with a mic or something, someone needs to be around. So that's normal daytime hours all the way up into kind of late evening. But the weekends are available as well. But that's another advantage I have, is that I can set up appointments how you want. So if somebody says, look, I really want to record this gig, but I don't get off work till 9 o'clock. Is there a way we can get a couple hours till 11? I'm able to do that if we can plan it out. So it's pretty flexible. But it's usually by appointment only. People can't just walk in and expect to get the studio because there's a schedule that usually is full of people that are expecting to use it at a certain time. So that's the only disadvantage. So otherwise it's open. We have a full DAW in Reason 6, or actually Reason 7 now, that we use as the base for most of the projects that we do. We don't actually use Pro Tools or Digital Performer just yet. But we're planning on getting all those DAWs installed on this particular Mac. So we use a Mac Mini that's running about 10 gigabytes of RAM. We're using a balanced audio interface and then a FireWire multi-channel interface for big projects. And that's the main brains for everything. And it can be adjusted to whatever is necessary. So there are different accounts set up for different uses, like for people that are renting it out for. Particularly, we have sound libraries that you can use for, say, rap style music or world music or things like that. So that's as far as the computer goes. As far as the rest of equipment, the main bridge is the monitors here. So this is where everything is mixed and mastered. So this is like the main, most important thing. So we provide all that. We're setting it up for surround, but it's not set up yet. So you have all this at your disposal, plus we have vocal mics, instrument mics. We have a number of instruments. There's a lot of acoustic and electric instruments. There's going to be some more keyboards, and there's drums and percussion and flutes and tin whistles and all kinds of little bitty handheld instruments and things. Anything that we may need to make whatever we need for a song. If we need to sample something, or a shaker, or some particular tambourines, things like that. But people also bring in their own gear as well. So. And the other thing that we provide that's actually a really nice advantage that most people think about as a major tool is the sound deadening in here. The fact that we have diffusion and it's so dead and that everything is flat. When you mix, you get a good mix, and that's a major factor in making good music. Well, we plan on adding surround for sure, and we just haven't gotten there yet. So there'll be a surround system for mixing for 5.1 for video. And over in the far corner, we're going to be putting a big screen for when we do ADR or when there's video editing, so it could be looked at on a big screen over there. And the only other thing that we thought about is expanding into some practice areas and some isolation booths if need be. And that depends on what happens with my other business that uses the outside part, the graphics. If we outgrow that area, then I can move them out and I can take over. But at the moment, it's pretty much just adding software and adding talent, adding people, engineers, people that know what they're doing, adding community to it. That's really the main expansion. But what you see, the way it's set up, is pretty much ready to go. It's a great little small spot for working with small projects. The difference between me and a big time, like a high budget studio, is mainly its space. Obviously, we're a lot smaller, but that could be a disadvantage, but not necessarily. I mean, we could find big spaces if we need to. But the major advantage that I have is really more psychological. It's more intimacy and connecting with the talent that you're working with to be able to talk to each other right across the desk. And that was something that I learned from a guy that had a studio in St. Louis in the 80s as I grew up in high school. And he decided not to have a separate booth, and it worked. Sheryl Crow went there, a lot of famous jazz artists were there. And they just really liked that they were right there, and you could just talk to each other. And when you're recording, you just put headphones on. It doesn't really have... So that I think is a major advantage. I think that allows me to be able to have more of a laid-back atmosphere, and that helps people that tend to be nervous in the studio. And that happens because you're paying for your time, or you don't know if it's going to work out, whatever. But it allows you to feel more comfortable, more relaxed, and it really fosters collaboration and security for, inside when you're thinking about what you want. You'll perform better. Overall, that's the major difference, I think, personally. And I think that some of our production I'm very critical of my production, so I don't follow the trends that I think everybody is following. Like, say today, one of the big things is heavy compression on stuff. And I don't agree with that. I think that it's important to keep some compression so you don't blow a speaker out, but it still needs to have a natural sound, not sound like it's coming from a radio. So quality and detail and analyzing those sounds and listening over and over and over to get it just right, that's something that's very important to me. And you don't always find that in big budget studios. Sometimes big budget studios are just a big pumping loud sound. But sometimes they're really good. There are studios that are very gifted and talented. They have great engineers, great producers. And it all depends on who you have working for you as well. But that's probably one of the main things, the intimacy and the quality of what I can do.